All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're talking about a pretty massive shift happening in the cloud world. Specifically, how you can run Google's powerhouse software stack on the hardware you already own. We're going to take a close look at Google Distributed Cloud, or GDC, and really focus on its hardware and partner ecosystem. This is a big deal, so let's dive in.
So if you're anywhere near a data center, this question probably hits a little too close to home, right? The whole virtualization market has been completely shaken up lately. And for a lot of folks, the budget uncertainty has become a real nightmare. Costs just aren't predictable anymore, and those bills, they just keep climbing.
And we're not talking about a small price hike here. We are seeing baseline licensing costs jump by an average of 3 to 5 times since the Broadcom acquisition of VMware. This is the license shock everyone's talking about, and it's forcing CTOs everywhere to seriously start looking for an escape plan from their old stack. The financial pressure is just immense.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll unpack the current market chaos. Then we'll get into GDC's core philosophy, which is pretty different. After that, we'll explore its partner ecosystem, doing some deep dives on Cisco and NetApp, and finally, we'll wrap it all up with why this new model is such a strategic win.
Okay, so let's start at this crossroads, where honestly so many IT departments are finding themselves stuck. The old, comfortable world of enterprise virtualization has been totally rocked, and you really have to understand why to see where the whole market is going next.
This chart right here breaks down that license shock perfectly, and here's the real kicker. The model has completely flipped from a predictable per-CPU license to a mandatory per-core subscription. Now, this doesn't just raise costs, it forces you to pay for a minimum number of cores and a whole bundle of features you might not even need, which just destroys any sense of budget predictability.
So in the middle of all this chaos, Google has come to the table with a really different philosophy for GDC. Instead of locking you into a single hardware and software stack, the whole idea is to decouple them, to completely separate the software from the silicon.
And they make this possible through a deployment model they call GDC Software-Only. And, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Google gives you the advanced software layer, and you bring your own servers. It's all about giving you the benefits of a modern, cloud-native stack without forcing you into a massive, expensive hardware refresh.
So this is the really crucial part to understand, this division of labor. On the one hand, you've got everything Google manages through GDC. That's the entire workload lifecycle. Think managing VMs, containers, all with modern Kubernetes tools. But on the other hand, you and your partners, you manage the hardware lifecycle. That's everything from BIOS and firmware configuration all the way to provisioning the physical machines.
Okay, so you might be thinking, if I'm responsible for the hardware, how on earth do I make sure it's all compatible? Well, that is a great question, and that's exactly where the GDC-ready ecosystem comes in. It's Google's answer, and it's basically your best defense against vendor lock-in.
And this is not some small, exclusive club. The GDC Ready program includes all the major players, the heavy hitters you already know and trust in your data center: Cisco, NetApp, Dell, HPE, and AMD. This validation process ensures that Google's software stack just works seamlessly on a huge range of third-party hardware, and that gives you real, genuine flexibility.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. How do you actually manage the metal in this new world? This is where a partner like Cisco is absolutely key. The easiest way to think about it is like this. GDC is the operating system for your workloads, but Cisco Intersight, that's the manager for the underlying BIOS and firmware.
This quote just sums it up perfectly. GDC handles the apps, the VMs, the containers. Cisco Intersight provides that cloud-based control plane for the physical hardware itself. And the so what here is huge. It means your IT operations team doesn't have to learn a completely new set of tools. They can just use the Cisco skills they already have to manage the hardware, which dramatically de-risks the whole process of adopting this new platform.
And this workflow, it's actually pretty brilliant in its simplicity. First, you use Intersight to automatically provision and set up your physical servers. Next, you install GDC on that prepared hardware. Then GDC takes over to manage all the workloads. And finally, Intersight sticks around in the background, managing the hardware's health and firmware for its entire lifecycle. It's just a really clean separation of concerns that makes everyone's job easier.
Of course, compute is only half the story, right? You also need storage. And that's where another key GDC-ready partner, NetApp, steps into the picture. They're all about providing that enterprise-grade storage for both your new cloud-native workloads and your legacy stuff running on GDC.
Now, the magic that makes all this integration happen is a technology called the Container Storage Interface, or CSI. You don't need to be a deep expert on it, but here's what you need to know. It's the industry standard that lets Kubernetes, which is the beating heart of GDC, talk to and control pretty much any compatible storage system out there.
And NetApp's version of this is a piece of software called Trident. Think of it as the CSI provisioner. It's the bridge. So when a container running in GDC says, hey, I need some persistent storage, GDC makes a standard request, and Trident is the one that translates that request into a brand new storage volume on your NetApp system. The real game changer here is that it gives developers a true cloud-like on-demand experience for enterprise storage, which just speeds everything up without cutting corners on data protection.
So let's pull all these threads together. What's the big strategic payoff of this whole approach? Well, it all boils down to modernization. But, and this is the key part, it's modernization with choice. You are not being forced down a single path into one vendor's vision of what the future should look like.
And this slide really hammers that point home. When you look at the competition, you see a really clear difference. AWS Outposts, that's all proprietary hardware. Azure Stack, it's very selective. But Google's strategy for GDC is intentionally fundamentally open. It embraces multi-hardware environments, giving you the power to pick the best tools for the job.
Ultimately, the value proposition is simple, but it is incredibly powerful. You really do get the best of both worlds. You get Google's cutting-edge, Kubernetes-first software for managing all your applications, but you get to run it on the enterprise hardware from vendors like Cisco and NetApp that is already in your data center and that you already know and trust.
And that leaves us with one final strategic question to think about. As the big tech vendors keep consolidating and creating these ever more tightly integrated proprietary stacks, is betting on an open ecosystem that separates software from hardware your best defense? Based on everything we've seen, it is definitely a powerful strategy to reclaim control over your own infrastructure.